And yeah, I'd like to welcome you all. And once again, thanks to International Hoof-Care Summit for inviting me along to speak at Summit. Yeah, it's a great honour to speak to you all. And my name's Jonathan Nunn, and a follow-up from yesterday. I thought this presentation would fit quite well with my presentation on my fellowship study. So for any of you that weren't here along yesterday, if you want to catch up on some of the notes, you'll find notes on my presentation yesterday in the presentation brochure. So it's about negative planar P3. Again, I've been a farrier, just to recap, I've been a farrier for 32 years. I work in Middle England, in Staffordshire, and this is something it's a very real problem in my mind, in a lot of the work that I do. I'm a regular farrier. We've got a mixed farrier practice, but concentrating on a lot more remedial work now. So I see a lot of broken horses, broken feet, injury-prone feet, such as this. So it's really my approach to how I treat negative plane of P3. Oh. Go on that. So negative planar distal phalanx, you'll recognise all this terminology: derotation of P3, reverse pitch of P3. I quite like that. Some of you have seen Mike Savoldi, any of his lectures. He calls it pitch and yaw, and it's quite a good descriptive term. So reverse pitch of P3, counter rotation of P3. Negative palmar angle, negative plantar angle in the hinds. Subluxation of P2, which I think sometimes we don't consider that little bone, P2, and for me that's a really important part of this, is the engagement of P2. And the subluxation of P2 is often a subsequent problem of negative palmar angle. So any questions during the lecture, feel free to put your hand up. I'll be glad to answer anything as we go along. Anything you don't understand, put your hand up, ask me to explain. Or if you don't understand my English, I'm sorry about that. I'll try and be clear. So all this terminology we need to understand, and we need to be, the same as an anatomical terminology. I think there's so many descriptive terms of negative plane of distal phalanx, but I'm going to call it negative plane of distal phalanx. Keep it simple. So negative plane of distal phalanx, as I just said, forefoot negative palmar angle, hindfoot negative plantar angle. So what are some of the visible signs of negative planar distal phalanx? We've all seen feet like this. If you haven't in your careers, then you will. I guarantee it. Collapsed or underrun heels, poor hoof pastanaxis, broken back, hoof pastanaxis, flat feet. Along with that, weak walls, thin soles, corns, overdeveloped frog. Poor posture or postural changes, which is something I'm going to discuss a lot during this lecture. And what I found very interesting this morning was Patricia's lecture on posture, and she asked me yesterday how I thought posture affected negative plane, and I think it's a big part of what we do, and we're going to discuss that during this lecture, and postural changes and how that affects us as farriers. More visible signs: stumbling, toe dragging, and of course lameness is the big thing. And back home, we've got a real wet climate, so this is a commonly seen problem, and it's a lot of feet look like this. We got mush feet at the moment. It's real wet, and a lot of our owners insist on their horses being out 24/7 in mud and sludge, and these feet just don't get a break. This photo, courtesy of Dave Nichols, it describes quite well what I wanted to talk about. All these factors, and there's probably a lot more signs that that you would suggest that we need to, as farriers, we need to recognise these signs, because they're not always as obvious as this, but I think taking a good look at a foot and saying, we need to consider this, might need X-rays. It seems like my whole career, and you'll be the same, we concentrate on the distal limb and alignment of the phalanges. So just this picture is just to identify, what as farriers, the constant battle that we have to align the phalanges, trim and balance the foot, create good AP balance. And again, subluxation. So subluxation as a defined term is a partial dislocation of a bone. And what I see with in a lot of cases, and some of the pictures you'll see in this presentation, subluxation of P2 is a big factor. And I think my shoeing methods, the way I try and restore balance, engages P2. So we all recognise that diagram. But I just wanted to remind us, as farriers, it's we're up against it sometimes. It's an impossible task, irregular shoeing intervals, again, postural changes, and this is what I'll discuss in this further on in the lecture. So this is what we see. Again, it's another foot. It's pretty obvious that this coronary band's pointing skywards, And again, I use the coronary band as a visual reference point. So if your coronary band's pointing above the elbow if it's a hind foot, then you've got to take a look at that foot and get digging, take some foot off. This is actually one that we shoe, and it had gone way overdue, and it had already had problems before. And I'd got this lecture coming up, so I thought and her vet had been out and took some radiographs of it, and this is what we saw. I was shocked that this was a horse that we'd shod, but it had got a lot of vertical depth, and she just left the shoes on way too long. So in that, sometimes trimming alone can be the solution. As you can see from the coronary band, I call it the trajectory of the coronary band. So take a look at your coronary bands, in the hind feet especially, and it gives you a good indicator of where the pedal bone is. It's a good reference point. And considering this foot was so distorted, that coronary band's really straight. It's a really good shape. And we decided to just leave the shoes off the hind shoes, to try and alleviate the problem. So just a reminder, going back to Patricia talked about, we shoe horses, not feet, and it's a real important message to remember. We shoe the limb, scapular-humerus angles, really important. So the angle of the scapula, and shoeing the limb and taking the limb into consideration. Front and hind feet. So again, the alignment of the limb and consideration of hoof pastern axis is something that's foremost in my mind. And I'll take a good look over. We're all busy guys. We're all put under constraint. You get somewhere, you get to a barn, you're going to shoe 3 horses, and they come out with 6, and then suddenly all those plans that you were going to look at the horses that day and assess them and watch them walk, is easily neglected by the sudden onset of more pressure in work. So sometimes it's not practical, and it's really difficult for us as farriers to view the horse correctly. But I take time. It's a really important part of my work, and I'd say probably 70%, 80% of the horses that I shoe on a regular basis, I watch them walk at least every time, if not every other time. But there's not many horses on my book that I don't watch walk pull the rugs, you know. I very rarely shoe a horse with the rug still on, you know. And, you know, again, awareness of the horse's posture and, you know, muscle development, you know, and anything like that. I take a good look at the whole horse. So we're going to just discuss shoeing the whole horse and the skeleton of the, you know. And remember, this was a frame I took from 3D Horse. It's a real good app. If you anyone seen it, you can get that on the iPad. And again, for my students, it's a really good reference point for the skeleton. You can load the muscles or dissect the muscle groups down, you know. So I'd recommend 3D Horse. Try and get hold of it, or you might have seen on the Workman booth the Afigos Hoof Explorer as well. That's really neat, and I use that a lot for explanation to clients. I use electronics a lot. I use my iPad for my diary at work, and I use my iPad for discussion with my clients, you know. And I think the further we get in our careers, the more we realise that the need to communicate with clients is really important. Explain what you do as much as do it, and talk to your client and say, yeah, well, if we do this, this is going to happen, or, you know, I know your vet said do this, but this isn't practical, and, you know, discuss why you're going to do stuff. And communication is the key thing, and you have happier clients and sounder horses with better communication. So this is one of the factors in the UK that it's a big problem. I mean, a big problem. So rider influence, we see it's a sensitive subject, but I certainly see a lot of fat asses on horses. Probably not as big as this one, but how can you approach a client and say, yeah, I know your horse is stumbling, I know your horse is this and that, but, you know, you can't expect that horse to be an athlete when you're sitting a big fat ass on it like that. But I don't tend to discuss those kind of problems with my clients. But I know some farriers who are very, very upfront about it, you know, and they will say stuff, but you risk losing a whole barn full of work if you. But actually, I don't know if I'd want a whole barn full of horses that had riders on like that. You know, you'd have more than enough problems. At least they'd share the cakes with you.
John, there is scientific guidelines for this now published.
Oh yeah.
You can actually show it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in that. Yeah, but actually, BSPS rules. So British Show Pony Society has just brought in a rule that if you're 20% of your horse's body weight, you're not getting in that class. You know, they threw out a bunch of riders at the international, like the Olympia, at the show, in the show classes, especially pony classes. You know, we've got a lot of overweight fat ponies with big ass riders on them, and yeah, they're throwing them out, which is it needs to be done. Because there's a realization that there's a lot of problems caused by. I know this is a joke picture, you know. It's way bigger than we would see, but you know, if you're 20% of the horse's body weight, that's a fair weight. And interestingly, I had fun I was sitting around at a horse show and looking at the different horses that were walking around the horse show. And Arab riders, very rarely you see overweight Arab riders, you know. Their horses are generally small and lean, and you know, the riders are often in the show classes, in the heavyweight cob classes. You know, we have a lot of heavyweight cob riders as well, so they often suit the horse that they're on. But I'd really be interested in looking at that study, yeah. So this is more of a perfect world, you know. sadly, not any of my clients look like this, I don't think. And we'd all love to live in a perfect world, but we don't. So we've got to just deal with what we're given, and so is that horse. You know, he's got to deal with whatever he's dealt with in life. And as farriers, we have to sometimes put up with the consequences of what happens at the other end of the feet. You know, this is a good picture, and again, going back to Patricia's lecture this morning, 4-square platform, you know, and I like this picture. It kind of discusses what I'm going to go into in the next slide as well. But you know, a platform of support, you know, and there's a platform of support on a platform of support, you know, and this is a comparison that a friend of mine has discussed. Danny Bennett, you know, and he believes that if you imagine the horse's back as a rope bridge, you know, it is a bridge of support, and if the bridge starts to sag, then the supporting columns at each end have got to do something to compensate for the sagging in the middle. Again, this is an overweight horse, but it's pretty typical of what I see, and a lot of the guys at home will tell you this has become the norm. You know, we see this every day, you know, and we don't see so many lean, fit leisure horses. A lot of them they're loved pets and they're overfed, but it's a real problem. And for me, the majority of my work is based around the leisure horse and the pleasure horse. So, you know, a good deal of the horses that I see look this way. But this kind of bridge theory, and I quite like it, and I discuss it with my clients, and I can approach them with this one. Rather than telling them they got a fat ass, I'll talk to them about the fitness of the horse and the posture of the horse, and how they could help the horse by regular work and trying to fit it through their spine. So a lot of these factors, I think, can influence us as farriers. We know that. You know, we don't need to go over the fact that posture affects what we do. But if we recognise it and we discuss it with clients, then there's something that we can do about it. So just suffering in silence for me isn't the way of finding a solution to that horse's problem. And that horse's problem is my problem. So I've got to get to the bottom of it in a subtle way. And you know, I'll often discuss, and I'll bring up pictures like this, you know, and I'll say, look, you know, I don't want to offend you, but I think your horse needs to lose weight. And you know, certainly, a comparable picture like this, all these things affect us. So horse's body weight, conformation. But I think too many farriers, maybe, as Patricia said this morning, write off a horse for bad conformation, when actually it's just poor posture that we're dealing with. Poor posture, and it's acquired. You know, it's not a developmental problem from birth. Often it's acquired through incorrect muscle development. Fitness, obviously, and discomfort are all factors. And again, give credit to the horses that I shoe. This young horse is a young event horse, much loved. Yeah, and she actually works this horse and keeps it some level of fitness, you know. But I noticed throughout the time that I'd been shoeing Yogi, and I shot him from when he was 4 years old. And this picture was taken last year, and he was 6. But his posture wasn't great. His attitude to shoeing wasn't good. I had difficulty with his hind feet, and when he went to the vet clinic, they found that he'd got SI pain, sacroiliac, suspensory discomfort, and some impingement of the spinous process as well. So I think Yogi had adopted, you know, this was his normal posture. He wasn't hunched. This was just, I was stood at the back of the van, took a picture, and that was his normal stance. But it's recognising these changes in posture, which which I want to discuss. And again, the influence on his heels, on his hind feet, you know, he's bearing a lot more weight through his heels, and you can see from that picture, you know, he's gonna soon become reverse rotated in his hinds. And I think certainly for us as farriers, why we're seeing so many horses with reverse rotation in hind feet, especially, is because of these subtle postural changes that maybe no one's picking up on. And some of these horses are living their whole life through with these postural adaptations, and yeah, we can't quite get to the bottom of it because we're not treating the whole horse.
In an instance like that, just in his stance and his posture, he's overloading his heels and collapsing.
I think that's what he was doing, yeah. And again, Yogi is another good teacher for me. You know, he's a horse that made me realise that he was suffering a lot of pain, and he wasn't really making a big fuss about it. You know, and I think that's as I've gone through my career, and you guys will, you know, you'll all recognise it and know as well. Horses are so stoic, and they suffer so much with that before they indicate that they've got pain. And often when the pain indicators are so real that we notice it, then it's a long way down the road. So for me, to do my job well, you know, I want to recognise those signs before they become extremely painful and a devastating injury for that horse. So in Yogi's case, I think, you know, it was a good call from the vets, you know, and he actually had suspensory fasciotomy and hind limb neurectomy. But I mean, yeah, maybe this is it's a big problem for us. There's a lot of horses that are getting suspensory injuries, high suspensory desmitis, and no one seems to have the answers. Why you know, is it because it's just been diagnosed more? You know, it's not a new problem. It's been around for many hundreds of years, and same as spinous process impingement or SI issues. But he got the lot, and he was starting to develop some real postural adaptations, and this was weeks after, not even weeks, days after surgery, and you know, his stance was noticeably changed. And again, that wasn't a posed shot. It was just him standing there, you know, comfortable horse. But he'd gone from being hunched to, you know, his posture had completely changed. And I took we took an early set of X-rays when he was referred, this horse, and I've actually now I'd like to take another comparable set of X-rays to see if the pedal bones changed position in the hind limbs. I didn't have to do any remedial work on Yogi, and you know, this was a set of X-rays, fronts and hinds. So the fronts are on the top, hinds are below, and you can see that pedal bone starting to, it's flat, you know, and he's got a good foot, and he shouldn't have had. I don't think he should have had a reverse angle on his pedal bone. He shod regular. He was shod every 5 weeks, and the vets were happy with the X-rays, but I personally wasn't. Left hind was slightly reversed, 1 or 2 degrees reverse rotation, but in my mind it wasn't enough to warrant remedial shoeing at that time, because I think you'll agree that, you know, the postural changes for me, you know, was enough, and now that horse's feet have changed again. You know, his hind feet are deeper, they're more deeply vaulted. He's got, you know, it's a lot easier to trim and align to a good pastern angle, and again, this horse is a realization for me that, you know, we're dealing with things sometimes. What we're dealing with is a consequence of sometimes what's going on higher up. But if we just suffer it in silence and don't indicate that maybe there's a deeper influence here, you know, then we'll never get what we want, the results. So just to recap on ideal angles, palmar angle, P3, you know, 3 to 5 degrees. We discussed that yesterday. we were supported in our study that palmar angle were accepted as 3 to 5 degrees positive in front and hind feet. So that's kind of what we strive for. I don't tend to listen to the non-believers who say that P3 should be ground parallel. If you disagree with that, then by all means we will discuss it. But I think the norm is 3 to 5 degrees positive. That's what I strive for. So yeah, just to recap on the ideal angles. But again, my lecture yesterday, we went into more in depth into the apical angle. I'll talk some more about that. In my early career, this is kind of what I was faced with. Instructions from vets. They'll look at radiographs and they'll say, yeah, I want the toe taken back here and I want the heels taken back, you know. and this slide kind of typifies that, you know, the toe is evil and must be punished. And it seems like there's a lot of guys still punishing toes. And again, what we talked about yesterday in our foot map, we trim to the highest and widest point of the frog. I don't like dropping heels down to the widest point of the frog, because then I feel that then I've got to back the toe up hard, you know. And the hoof capsule is a support mechanism in itself, you know. And we shouldn't be undermining that toe to a point where it becomes weak. And it's a trend, and I see it more and more, where toes are getting ripped back. And again, I'm guilty of that too. In my early career, you know, people were like, "Oh yeah, John, you get the feet shorter than anyone. And I love it when you get the feet that short. They look lovely." Yeah, and I'm backing up feet, and then I've learned the problems that I had in early stages of my career. I created them, you know, and I don't mind admitting that. You know, I've been the natural balancer, and yeah, I've put all the shit on feet that I thought I should do, you know, because I was instructed to. But I try and find practical solutions, you know, to support the hoof capsule and not undermine it. So, you know, backing up toes heavily is not something that I need to do in my shoeing business, and I don't encourage it. So I want some input from you guys on this. You know, this is a pair of radiographs. A lady had brought her horses over from France, and she wanted a remedial farrier, and she called me and, "Oh yeah, I've got to have a remedial farrier because my horse has got reverse rotation of the pedal bone." And I said, "Well, send me the X-rays, I'll have a look." And she sent me these. So, if you were presented with those X-rays, what would your first thoughts be? Any answers? Yeah, retake them. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I mean, to my mind, it's how can someone take an X-ray like this and come with a diagnosis of a lameness? You know, she said the vet had said he got reverse rotation and it needed heart bars. It just needed a block under its foot. But yeah, it was from France. It was some eminent vet from France. But I said, well, they're not really any use to me. You know, we need to take some more. But how many times are you all faced with? We've all been there. We're all faced with X-rays like this, you know, and you say, "Hey, you know, don't you think that maybe that horse should have been stood on the block?" Yeah, but it surprised me. But I know good X-rays are a good image, but it's just not even on the block. I don't know. Does P3 shape dictate foot conformation and shape? I think yes. I think I've supported that with my study. This was a pedal bone that Peter Day showed me at RVC. We were talking about the study and you know, about my study, and I was like, "Oh yeah, what do you think? You know, do you think it's worth pursuing?" And Peter got this bone out, and he said, "This was a horse he was shoeing for 20 years, a flat-footed thoroughbred, And he said, look at this, you know, and that, you couldn't get much flatter than that, you know. And but I think most definitely, then you know, Mike Savoldi, you know, I have big respect for Mike and the work that he does, and bone morphology definitely is reflected in the hoof wall, and that was where I endeavoured to try and support some of that with the small study that I did, you know. So the apical angle, we discussed it yesterday. So the apex angle, as you can see from that pedal bone, you know, that's going to be a flat foot. There's no getting around that fact. So again, supporting, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, just to recap, I hypothesized that the apex angle of P3, so apical angle, would reflect the dorsal wall to weight bone surface in the trimmed foot. So again, that, you know, I think we can say that, yeah, there's evidence to suggest that the apex angle is certainly an influence on hoof wall angle. Going back, I started to talk about backing up the feet and trying to maintain that hoof pastern axis, but in my mind, like over trimming the dorsal wall isn't going to maintain the hoof pastern axis. You know, we might be able to assist in other problems that are, you know, a long toe, low heel situation, but without the correct support, this was a cadaver limb that I collected. I was collected from a local abattoir, just some feet for the freezer for dissection and for my students. And this was one that stood out to me. It wasn't one that I shod. I better say that. I don't know who shot it, but I think he needs to go back to school. Certainly with the clenches, anyway. But you know, I could see from this foot in the freezer. I thought, one day I'm gonna cut that in half and see what's going on inside that foot. It got an aluminium bar shoe on it, but you can see that toe's been backed up to hell, you know. So there's a ridge there where the dorsal wall is stripped the dorsal wall back. It wasn't laminitic. Certainly didn't look laminitic. So I just cut it in half, and it really interested me. Again, I think we've all been guilty of this, like over trimming the dorsal wall. And I say to a few guys, you know, a few guys that are coming under the toe with their shoe and stripping back the wall, you know, and I say, if you discuss keratinization, right, surely if you take away that hoof wall's ability to keratinize, so it's not load bearing, surely then you're going to get dissimilar keratinization throughout the hoof wall. So I think that's one of the things as farriers, and as I can explain, like when I get that soft hoof wall when the toe's been backed up too much, you know, I think not only the fact that it's been trimmed back to the stratum internum, but also the next time when you see that foot, it's not keratinizing, it's not under load. So surely shoeing under the toe to that extreme, you know, it can't be good for the hoof. So if you take away that foot's ability to keratinize, you'll have dissimilar areas of keratinization, surely. And you know, that's a study for someone in the future, I'm sure. Is like different areas of keratinization and how load can affect keratinization. So yeah, we've all seen that. You know, Cytec is still it's not as widely used, thankfully, as it was. Most people have learnt to make other things out of their Cytec shoes, like forge them into other types of shoes, like you might see some of the ones on Facebook doing. Yeah, I forge welded a few together and made good shoes out of them, and it's good steel. And again, this actually was a picture that I pulled off of Facebook. Somebody proudly put in a picture on their profile, you know, and yeah, he certainly he certainly loves himself for that. I'm sure he does. But I mean, that shoe's set right under the wall, you know, and I try and avoid it. You know, unless it's a laminitic, which I think there are different circumstances in remedial shoeing. But yeah, I try and keep full contact through the entire circumference of the wall, and consider that, you know, when you're shoeing these sort of feet. So this is a shoe I use a lot at the vets, and I fabricate a lot of my heart bars. You know, sometimes I usually do a Wednesday at Pool House Vets, and again, it's a great opportunity for me to see horses before and after shoeing, and we evaluate them before and after. We X-ray them. Often they come back in 2 weeks later for a re-evaluation. So it's a huge opportunity for me to take a second look at my work, you know, and see that am I doing the right thing here. But a lot of the negative angle hind feet, so the negative plantar angle, P3, I find they need lateral support as well. And this is a tough shoe to make, you know. And I challenged Grant when we put this shoe on. Actually, Grant was with me because the vet clinic's near him, so we kind of meet up there and have a look at a few horses together. And I said to Grant, you know, that I'd like to see you make that one without fabricating. It'd take a long time. We're going to have a race. I'll probably video it. I'm going to fabricate one, and he's going to forge one. He'll probably win. But for me, the practical solutions of fabrication, you know, sometimes we'll get 10 horses in at the vets. I'm getting to the point where I'm having to do 2 days a week now. They've got a huge catchment area, but fabricating is for me the practical solution. I can get a good fit on my shoes, weld in the bar, and I can dictate very quickly and easily how much frog pressure I want to apply. And I'm cranking on a significant amount of frog pressure on some of these horses. But again, there's a lot of things that will factor into that, whether you should or you shouldn't. You know, we've got a lot of MRI diagnosis. So what I find is the complicated ones, sometimes when we've got lesions, deep flexor lesions, bone cysts in distal sesamoid, yeah, those horses don't like frog load. And sometimes you have the same problems, you know, you've got counter-rotated P3, and you've got a whacking great big bone cyst in distal sesamoid, and you've got to find a practical solution. But loading the shit out of the frog isn't going to help those horses. So I very rarely treat any one horse the same, and a lot of my evaluation is done with radiographs and MRI results as well. But I don't know if you've seen the same, but a lot of the hind feet that I'm seeing, they need that lateral support as well. So the lateral support heart bar is something that I think no one's manufactured it yet that I've seen. If anyone knows of that shoe, I'd really like to know about it, because I use a bunch of them. So I'm nearly always fabricating, just because I haven't got the time under pressure to make them. So whether you fabricate or use a ready-made heart bar, you know, it's for us. And I'm a shoemaker. Yeah, I love shoemaking, and I love to apply my own handmade shoes. But yeah, in practical terms, I can't do it. A lot of these horses are sedated. You know, we've only got kind of an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 window of opportunity to turn this job around. You know, and these people want results. You know, they've gone to this vet clinic. They've had an MRI. They've had all the diagnostics, and the Farrier solutions often are the main solutions in treatment. You know, so they want results fast. So I found, yeah, I can make them all. You know, I make any one of them, but practically in an everyday situation, it's not possible for me. But fabricating my heart bars has been really helpful. So whenever I'm fitting a heart bar, you know, I consider the frog shape and function. You've got to consider it when engaging it for support. So if you're gonna load that frog, You know, don't get undermining the strength of the frog. You know, and consider the internal shape and the corium shape when you trim that frog. And this is something that Grant taught me some years ago. You know, it's like, don't just do an automatic frog trim. If you're going to engage it for support, it needs to have a big surface area. So don't get your loop knife in and hook out the sides. You know, keep the sides of the frog nice and strong, and flat top it. You know, I'm not afraid to load the frog in the right circumstances. Now, I wouldn't advocate you do it every time. And some horses you may not have the benefit of X-ray, but you decide to load the frog. If it doesn't work, there's probably something going on inside where that horse is going to react to that pressure. So again, think of other ways of doing it. There's more than one way of loading the frog. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a heart bar. Oh, we stopped. Malfunction. We said there was there'd been no techie malfunctions, but something's happened here. Oh, there we go. Just joking. Thank you. So again, frog shape and function. Your external features of the frog mirror the internal. So these are a few slides that I put together of some of the work that I've done. And you can see from the center picture, you know, how much that frog shape mimics the trim frog, you know, and that's really important to me, you know. When I'm applying the heart bar, yeah, I'm shoeing the frog, and I don't want to undermine it. I want to use every bit of it to that horse's advantage. So it's really important to think about that. Back to Finley. You might have seen Finley in my presentation yesterday. I've learnt a bunch off this horse. He's been a really good teacher to me, you know, and I owe him a lot, and him and others, you know. And if you care to look at the horses that you shoe in the right ways, you know, they're sometimes your best teachers. And this horse was salvaged, you know. When he came into the vets, he could barely stand without a shoe on a foot, you know. He was sedated the first time because he was so lame. He couldn't stand on a foot when it was unshod. So as yesterday, so you've seen these slides, you know, before and after, the before and after of 15 minutes, and this was one of the first realizations just how much frog load could really change the position of P3 for me. And I thought, well, if I can do that in 15 minutes, what can I do in 15 months? You know, so this to me was kind of a pivotal moment. And again, some of you will have seen Grant's presentations and how he engages the frog with a heart bar. You know, but I think we're in a great position now that with radiographic evidence, you know, digital X-rays, you know, we've got detailed pictures, and you know, it's groundbreaking evidence, you know, that we can prove these things work, you know. So I think that's a pretty good result 15 minutes after shoeing, you know.
Most of that improvement that comes from your trim or from the heart bar and pressure?
From the heart bar, yeah. I didn't trim very much off at all, truthfully. Where are we? There's a little bit of dorsal wall dressing, but you know, again, I tried to support the dorsal wall. I don't undermine it. I don't come under it. You know, and he was severely lame, and almost to the point where he was going to be written off by the owner. You know, she was on his last chances. You know, and she bred him, and she said he'd always had flat feet, but there was very little trimming to do. And again, from his foot, you can see this is Finley's feet. I think might have been second or third shoeing, you know, second shoeing, I think. We put on a Jim Blurton heart bar with a leather pad. but you can see from the state of his heels, you know, that was a tired foot. You know, that foot was just holding on to whatever it could. You know, the heels were trashed. You know, he hadn't really got very much foot to take away. So I knew with that horse, you know, whatever I was going to do with him was going to be protect and support. So this is a method that I use a lot: leather pad with a heart bar. JBs, you know, they work just fine for me. I know some people have preferences, but you know, Jim's with a leather, and I put magic cushion underneath as well. And I find that when I go back to the foot, you know, I've got good live sole. I've protected the sole. I've not put it under a lot of load. So it's protect and support. That's kind of my policy of shoeing. You know, if I put a regular heart bar on without any packer or without any heart bar, without any pads, I find the dirt and the debris. You know, horses can get sore from just the build-up of debris in the foot. So if you can stop that shoe from collecting debris and stones getting stuck in the clefts, then you know the horse is going to be more comfortable. So I've nearly always got some sort of mechanism of support with whatever shoe I'd put on. So often I use a heart bar with a leather pad, and I stopped using leather. You know, probably 5 years ago I was still using plastic pads and packers, and I saw a guy with a big roll of leather. He was taking it to his friend, and I said, "Oh yeah, what are you doing with that?" He's like, "Yeah." But we generally, I think the whole farrier industry had kind of forgotten about leather for a point in the UK. You know, we weren't using leather very much. But yeah, I'm into leather, and that's it's a big part of it. You know, it's a good solution to a lot of the problems that I see, the leather pads. So again, this is Finley. First saw him in 2015. So the previous X-rays, and this is one of the most recent X-rays from 2017. So I think that was July 2017. So you can see that foot's changed a lot. And I was just playing about with like the vets like to use these kind of diagrams to discuss with owners. You know, the ideal proportions, and I think it fits quite well into it. You know. But I think you tell me if you think I'm wrong, but center of rotation is in a different position. Do you agree? It's further forward. So I did a little few more lines on the X-rays, and just to really indicate kind of where my eye goes when I'm looking at these X-rays. You know, how we evaluate. And I suppose I use this kind of triangulation kind of method with my eye. And certainly I look at the heel bulb shape. And again, this is a really good picture, and you can see how the heel bulbs have changed. And if we go back to the original X-rays, which I will do in a sec, you know, the heel bulb form and shape changes dramatically, even straight after shoeing. So this is a good way of, you know, we took Finley from a reverse rotation with quite a low apical angle, 44 degrees. We took him to a positive palmar angle, and I think he got what's that say there? Yeah, 46 degree toe angle on his foot then, and we took him to a 51 degrees. But you know, look at the heel shapes on X-ray. When you see these collapsed feet, you see these original X-rays, and look at the heel bulb formation and how that's changed, shape under load, especially the left after shoeing. The one here, the bottom right, yeah. I think the heel bulb, you know, the heel bulbs, you know, you've engaged the support. And again, in another one of my lectures, I talk about ligaments, palmar ligaments of the foot. And when you get these feet that are hopelessly counter-rotated, And those ligaments, there's a lot of really, really important ligaments in the palmar ligaments, and some of them must be trashed. You know, when that horse has had such a reverse angle on his pedal bone for so long. And this is something I'd really picked up on I put this slide in last week because I thought, well, yeah, hey, well, I wonder what medial lateral positioning was like on Finley after shoeing, and I'd not really gone into this in depth, but I think medial lateral positioning is improved as well. So it kind of makes sense if you're going to support the frog. You know, we'd all agree that we can change the position of P3 with frog support. So with a laminitic, it works. So it's got to work with a reverse angle as well. You know, we're actually supporting that pedal bone and putting it back into a more comfortable position for the horse. And this is a method I use a lot: magic cushion and leather pads. Sometimes I mix a hoof matrix in with it, but you know, I get a real clean, good live sole when I go back to the foot. You know, 5 or 6 weeks later, you know, you'll get a new growth of sole, and that leather pad, I think the cavity allows live sole to grow and exfoliate, and the packers all work, but you know, I find that I get a different kind of sole growth with a pour-in pads, with a pour-in packer. So I really like the leather pads. Again, I fabricate with the workman shoe. The Warrior Special's a good shoe for a heart bar because it's got a wide onion heel. So I like the shoe. You can get a good heel fit, and it works well. I can fabricate the shoes quickly and easily. So yeah, I use those. This is something I'm working on at the moment as like a transitional treatment. You know, maybe in the case of Finley, I had a heart bar to put some fairly rigid support, and I find that you get a dramatic improvement in the initial, you know, when you take a horse from a chronic severe lameness to somewhat comfortable and being able to be ridden again. But I've reached it kind of plateaus and reached a level where you think, oh, I want better results, but I don't want the weight of the heart bar, you know. So, you know, obviously weight's an issue with some of these horses. With a lame horse that's landing heel first or lateral or, you know, he's not got a flat level footfall. And I think when I put a critical eye over it, and you know, all these mechanisms of support then add weight. So this is something I'm playing around with at the moment, and we're just developing this as a product. This is going to be out there, but a leather pad with a frog support, and the ones that we put on Finley, they've worked great, you know, and you could almost see a result straight after, that he appreciated the less weight in the shoe. Sole pads, sole packers and pad fillers. Again, this has been discussed today. Amy discussed it in her lecture, which was really interesting. I'm reluctant to fill to the brim of the shoe. So when I use a packer or a pad filler, I try and be conservative with it. I use the packers with spider plates, and we've discussed today some of the injuries that I see commonly at the vets. And some of the guys were saying, what's the most common injury that you see? And I think it's probably collateral ligament injuries. So we use spider plates a lot for collateral ligament injuries, just to try and centralize support through the bone column. And then I use a packer. So if I've got a medial lateral imbalance, I'll maybe use a packer. More so, if I've got a low medial heel, I'll fill up the inside quarter of the spider plate. So I'll brim it on the inside and then fill the other two-thirds with not quite so much. But sole packers is something I use. It's definitely I don't shy away from using them. And in some instances when I can't engage the frog fully, I need to use a soft packer. Then they work great. And dental impression paste as well. Heel graduation. I used to be adamant I wouldn't graduate heels. I just would not do it. But again, we're seeing so many chronic injuries, and loved animals that people want to help in the best way they can. Or even, I've got a few valuable brood mares that have had distal impar ligament injuries or tendon lesions. I got one with a bone cyst that the only way we could get that sound was a heel graduation. So yeah, I probably made mistakes in the past where I wouldn't graduate, but now I will. And again, there's some great graduated pads on the market. We went to a lot of trouble making these shoes. These were Tool and Fuller graduated on a big horse with navicular syndrome, and he wouldn't stay sound if he didn't have a heel graduation. So I'm not against it, and I'd advise, certainly with MRI diagnostics, the only choice we've got in some cases is to graduate the heel to alleviate pain, especially with bone cysts, and I found it very successful with bone cysts in distal sesamoid, given horses a good quality of life, and some of the brood mares that I shoe that have to wear shoes to keep them sound, a lot of them are graduated. The way I look at it is it's restorative farrier, that's what we do. We're trying to restore function to the foot, help restore, and the techniques that I'm using with the pads to help restore vertical sole depth and the sole arch. I think Mike Savoldi again talks about the sole arch and the importance of the sole arch and how it can be a supporting bridge, And I find that with many horses when I've restored function to the sole, and again, we're washed out at the moment. A lot of our feet they're just washed out soles, and the flat feet just get flatter. And sometimes they need help. Encourage heel growth and improve angulation of the foot, and strengthen the hoof wall with alternative support to the frog and sole. Shared load, that's something I think I use that term a lot. We're sharing the load, utilising the frog in a lot of remedial aspects. And I think pads minimise bruising and debris and dirt build-up. I better use probably 8 or 10 pairs of leather pads a week on some of the vet clinic. I need to take at least 5 pairs with me because it's kind of a given that there's going to be a horse with a need for pads. The pads and the packers as well. Sometimes the antibacterial properties are real good. Especially with a magic cushion or some sort of antiseptic treatment underneath. I use copper sulfate sometimes, in the severe cases of thrush, I'll use copper sulfate powder as well, and dental impression paste. And again, when you're treating these horses, have a clear plan, a continuation plan, and discuss the continuation plan with your client. And that's really important, For me, as kind of the remedial farrier in a secondary referral situation, I contact primary farriers. I discuss with them what we've done. I invite them in to come and shoot a horse with me, and they get all the information they need to have a good continuation plan. I never undermine the primary farrier, and I try and be courteous in the way that we handle the business. So for me, it's a total waste of time and my effort if I don't give that horse a continuation plan. If I just do a wonderful job of fixing it and client goes away happy and 6 months later they're back again with a lame horse, then I've not helped that horse, So I have a clear plan for shoeing and trimming and fully explain the cost and continuation procedure to your client. Cost is a big factor, and again it's sometimes a deciding factor as to what methods I'll use. I think it's really important. You should consider the cost to that client because again, for the long-term future of that horse's benefits, it's got to be affordable. And in the case of laminitics, then it gets expensive. And I think you owe it to that horse to discuss with the client how much this is going to cost them in the long term, because they've got to make that decision, And if they're going to commit to start to start the treatment. You know, I don't want to hear 6 months down the line that they can't afford it anymore. You know, because that pains me and that hurts me that horse has gone through that and then there's no continuation. So pre-book appointments in the optimum time to maintain balance. You know, and it's always difficult. It's always difficult to convince horses owners that their horses need shoeing. Not every 9 weeks, but every 4 weeks. You know, so yeah, I'm strict on that, you know, and I'll make sure that I see the horses at 4 to 5 weeks, because I think that's the optimum time that we as farriers can maintain good balance. You know, anything beyond 6 weeks with an imbalance, you know, we're fighting against impossible odds made difficult. And keep records for comparison. Yeah, I've got hundreds of pictures of horses' feet on my phone, and you know, what I do with I haven't been able to find a good record keeping program, but what I do with the cases that come in, I take pictures with my phone and then I email those pictures back to myself. So yeah, I've got a good record. Then I can search the horse's name. So I've got an inventory of emails, like of comparable pictures. So I take a lot of pictures, and every horse that comes in, it has before and after pictures. And keep the MRI records as well. And it's great for then passing that information on to another farrier. So sometimes they don't stay connected with their original farriers, so they maybe go to another farrier. So then I need some sort of record to be able to pass on. I've started taking written notes as well. You know, I try my best, you know, to write down what I can. But I find the quickest and easiest method is get the iPhone out. I'd like to acknowledge Poolhouse Equine Hospital in Lichfield. Gil Riley and Richard Stevenson, they're both two great vets who are very proactive for farriers, and they discuss rather than instruct me how to carry on with my work. So, and I think going forward in the future, you know, I certainly encourage good communication with vets and farriers, you know, and we've got to try and build the bridges, not break them down. So I owe a lot to a great many people who've helped me along the way, and Professor Renata Weller and Grant Moon are two people who've also helped me a lot with my fellowship study, and to this day now standing in front of you, you know, they've been a great help. Battery power's low. I think that's it. And so, yeah, sometimes I feel like this at the end of every day, but it gets better, you know, and keep striving for what you can do, the best you can do for the horse, and it pays off. Thank you, and thanks for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. All quiet? Yeah, under the pads. Yeah. I use this like the soft pack as well. So Vetec it's got a pink label. I think it's soft packing material. So I use that quite a lot on the endurance horses that I shoe. So, but I think again you've got to consider the shore value of some of the packers that you use. So if you've got a thin sole that's sensitive, you know, don't go putting a packer in with a hard shore value, you know. So we find the soft packers are harder to get because not so many people buy them. So a lot of the suppliers don't stock the soft packers. So, but I use the dental impression material a lot as well, and I'll mix that with copper sulfate and get quite good results with that. Yeah, I think so, and I think that's why I use the pad as well, because I think you're going to get frog atrophy if you load the frog for long periods of time. But the pad kind of distributes the weight nicely and softens the weight bearing surface as well. So yeah, I definitely think that frog overload could could cause frog atrophy, you know. But yeah, I mean, on Finley, the first time I shod Finley, I probably had a 3/8 of an inch gap at the heels before I nailed the shoe on. I loaded that sucker, you know, and but almost straight away he stood comfortable, more comfortable. So I'll pin the heart bar on usually, 2 nails, drive it up, and then I'll nail the other one on, and then I'll nail the hind feet. I think we put 4 heart bars on him the first time we shot him, but didn't put pads on his hinds because didn't feel the need, and the cost was high as well. So again, I got a client that was conscious of the cost. But so normally I'll nail up 2 nails, and then I'll go to the hind feet and nail on, and then by the time you come back to the front, you know, that's just those heels the heel gap's disappeared, you know. So yeah, I mean that's another reason why I use the pads really. I think aggressive frog support with a steel heart bar straight onto the frog, you know, you do get some atrophy of the frog, yeah.
Do you have any experience with wedging medially as opposed to just a heel wedge?
A medial wedge. What, like, you mean like a half wedge pad, or building up with a filler, or? Yeah, I tend not to. I mean, you know, I might put a medial graduation, but I tend not to put heel lifts, medial lateral heel lifts. I tend to shy away from that because I think unless you do it with assisted frog support, again, like share the load, and then I'd put a medial lift, maybe with a shared load with a frog, you know. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with a medial lift if you need it, but it's knowing how long to leave it there before it starts to compress the heel. So I think in some cases the a medial lift will compress the heel as well. Yeah. I mean, I think the way that I look at it, you know, sometimes if I feel I need a medial lift, I'll probably more so flatten the outside, so I'll soften the landing on the outside. So normally, if I need a medial lift, you'll have a lateral medial footfall, won't you? So yeah. In other ways, I'll create a medial lift. So I'll maybe use a thicker section of shoe and pan the outside off, flatten the outside down, or grind it down to 8 mil, or use the 3/8 on the inside. Yeah. Or, you know, some people use a super fast or a filler. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.